Привет, moi друзья, and welcome to Tuesday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. The Russians have now joined the VR race, and what they're cooking up is no slouch of a VR headset. In fact, the specs we're shown are actually really insane. Facebook's antitrust lawsuit gets thrown out by judges, and VR is making a lot of money. Like, we're talking about multiple companies at this point reaching the hundreds of millions. Things are looking good. VR seems to be growing its full head of hair, but if you're not, here's a word from this video's sponsor. Recently, I learned some pretty interesting information. 2 out of 3 males will experience some form of hair loss before they're 35. And according to YouTube, y'all might want to listen to this. Hair loss isn't something to be embarrassed about, and there's something that you can do about it by using this video's sponsor, Keeps. Keeps is a service that teams you up with a licensed doctor, then recommends the best treatment for you, and then ships that treatment right to your door. And given the results and testimonies from hundreds of thousands of people, literally, Keeps works. But prevention is key. The sooner you start thinking about preventing hair loss, the more hair that you can save. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, then go to keeps.com/thrill or click on the link in the description to receive 50% off of your first order. That's keeps.com/thrill. Don't lose another strand you don't have to. But we've got a lot to cover, so let's just get right into the news. Last week I talked about Varjo and how they had some crazy big announcement up their sleeves. Well, we finally got that announcement, and predictably it was not some new hardware or Varjo's entry into the consumer VR space. Instead, it was a cloud-based meeting platform that, while may sound a little boring, is actually really cool. Basically, using a Varjo XR3, you can now bring other people that are in VR into your space using the XR3's litany of sensors that are built right in, that are constantly scanning the room or environment that you're in. And this isn't just some 360 video or 180 video. Your surroundings are scanned to give volumetric detail as well. So if there's, for example, a box in front of you, and you're using Varjo's cloud service with another user, you can be pulled into their environment and that box will be there for you too in 3D. Really awesome tech, and I can definitely see the applications, from showing people a construction site or build site, or even just presenting something. Varjo also aims to make this device agnostic, so this service may be coming to more devices than just the XR3. A while ago, I caught wind of a new location-based VR experience that's pretty different from the normal VR arcade or museum. This is Jump, a new Salt Lake City location that utilizes a custom VR helmet, a wingsuit, and a wind tunnel to provide a thrill-seeking wingsuit adventure. The idea is to recreate and enhance the typical wingsuit experience in real life in a completely safe environment, and to even make the experience crazier than what you'd normally get, giving what Jump has coined a hyper-reality experience. Definitely something I'd be interested in covering here. Now, comrade, time to talk about these Russian VR headsets. And when I say Russian VR headsets, I really mean it. At a recent startup conference in Skolkovo, a tech and business sector of Moscow, Russia, 2 new headsets made a somewhat surprise appearance from company Roscosmos, which, if you know what that is, you may be a little more excited for this. Now, if you don't worry. We'll talk about this interesting company and endeavor, but let's talk about the specs of these headsets first. First off, there were 2 headsets announced here. One of them is practically usable in its current state and is being used to test the technology and is coined the XR1. Now, this headset's cool, but it's got a pretty basic feature set that mirrors something like the Valve Index, unlike the second headset, which is actually pretty groundbreaking. So the XR1 is a laser-tracked VR headset using something that looks an awful lot like reverse-engineered Steam VR base stations, and it seems like that's kind of exactly what it is. But these 2 base stations have the ability to track 256 objects in an area of 200 square meters. Like I said, only using 2 of them. The rest of the specs are pretty standard, with a 90 to 120 Hz refresh rate, resolution of 2880 by 1440, an LCD display, and a pretty normal field of view of 105 degrees and eye tracking. So around the FOV of a Quest 2, give or take measuring error and eye relief. The other headset, however, called the Roscosmos XR2, also dubbed the Sokol 1, if you were meh about the XR1, this is legit ridiculous, with an insane resolution of 5760 by 2880 at up to 120 120Hz, this would be one of the highest resolution headsets ever made, and the field of view is no slouch either, bringing in 157 degrees diagonal. On paper, it's a crazy resolution and a field of view beast, and also both headsets will contain eye tracking built in. The Skokul One also uses the same Roscosmos laser tracking base stations, allowing for more tracking points and the precise laser tracking we all know and love. Both of these headsets will also be fully compatible with SteamVR, Astra Linux, and alternatively can be ran on Windows using its own platform. But like I said, SteamVR is supported, and supposedly these headsets may be available for civilian use. As in February of this year, Roscosmos mentioned they were creating civilian VR equipment at the time. Now, if you're not Russian or in Russia, this may be pretty difficult, as Roscosmos is a very interesting company. If you don't know, they're essentially the NASA of Russia. It's a state-owned corporation under the Russian Federation. They are the leaders of spaceflight, aeronautical, and astronautical research. The immediate usage for the Skokul One and XR1 are obviously for simulators at the Cosmonaut Training Center, both for the Soyuz spacecraft and the Eagle, and has been said to be perfect for training within VR in zero gravity or simulated zero-G environments. This will be part of an entire VR complex for the Russian state company, and the headsets are just part of that. The big positives I see here are the way that Roscosmos talks about their headsets. While of course VR is useful for all sorts of space training and design applications, they clearly note that these headsets will be used for civil customers, entertainment, education, and more. It's not every day that a state-owned company that specializes in spaceflight talks about any application for VR other than training, so it's welcomed. But of course, it's still the Russian Federation we're talking about, which makes me wonder how easy these will be to get your hands on if you're not in Russia or don't have the connections. No word on price, but both of these headsets will be coming later in 2021 to be available, so very soon. Hopefully, I can get my hands on one, but probably not. Speaking of Russia, I think it's time for a meme break! What you look like in VR versus how you actually look like in VR. By the way, full credit to the original creators of that video, it's hilarious. But now, back to the news. Now, I have some really odd news that took me for a surprise. Months ago, I talked about a huge antitrust case against Facebook. The case, summarized very briefly, is basically the Federal Trade Commission's complaint regarding Facebook partaking in monopolistic anti-competitive business practices, particularly surrounding the acquisition of WhatsApp and Instagram. Well, a judge quite literally just threw out the case and called for a dismissal on the basis of too much time having elapsed since the acquisitions, and that the FTC failed to provide enough facts that Facebook had a monopoly over personal social networking. The FTC can still refile the complaint with more evidence, but unless that happens, this is what Judge James E. Boasberg of the District of Columbia had to say. Quote, "Although the court does not agree with all of Facebook's contentions here, it ultimately concurs that the agency's complaint is legally insufficient and must therefore be dismissed. The FTC has failed to plead enough facts to plausibly establish a necessary element of all of its Section 2 claims, namely that Facebook has monopoly power in the market for personal social networking services. The complaint contains nothing on that score save the naked allegation that the company has and still has a dominant share of that market in excess of 60%, end quote. So unless something else is proposed or brought up here, the breaking up of Facebook into separate companies, those being Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp, seems to be practically impossible for the time being, and Facebook will remain exactly how they are now. The suit, in its very least, puts pressure on Big Blue to restrict their antitrust activities, but looking at how the VR industry is at the moment, I don't really see much pressure or change. But moving on, for pretty much the past decade, the VR industry has not been very lucrative. In fact, the name virtual reality was heavily tarnished by decades of startups and massive flops. VR was pretty much a dead gimmick, and to be honest, that tarnished name still affects the industry to this day. But this year has totally changed that narrative, and VR technology companies are, for the first time practically, really making a name for themselves and bringing in serious cash. To give you an idea, Oculus was purchased by Facebook back in 2014 for $2 billion. Well, I've mentioned this before, but Rec Room, an application originally native to only VR, was recently valued at $1.25 billion. This isn't a hardware company, this is a social VR software company, but that was is just the beginning. Many VR companies are getting funded at extreme levels and getting crazy valuations. VRChat recently closed on a Series D funding round, securing $80 million of investment, following a $10 million funding round in 2019. One of the taglines for this round is actually to build the creator economy, a place to earn and create all within the platform. Another far smaller company creating a VR meditation app called Trip recently raised $11 million in investments, following a $4 million raise in 2017. Pico with the Pico Neo 3 raised $66 million, and Rec Room $100 million following its valuation. And Applied VR, a company that aims to provide FDA-approved VR pain management, secured $29 million. In general, investors are extremely interested in hopping in on big VR projects. A lot of money is being raised, and a lot of money is being spent on research and products, and the hope for a lot of money being made is all the talk with VR startups right now. It seems investors are finally really looking at VR seriously and are providing VR companies with the cash they need to get off the ground and to be first to this scene when VR really goes crazy. This really hasn't happened before in our space, so of course it's exciting, quite literally funding the future of VR today, with lots and lots of money. You may remember a guy that goes by the name of Nibre. He's the modder behind the pretty famous Alien Isolation VR mod, as well as the VR mod for the Halo Master Chief Collection. That project gaining a lot of attention around a year ago before going dark. Not much was said about the mod after the initial announcement, but the project was looking really great with full motion controls and multi-game support. Nibre has talked openly about his fascination and love for Halo and his goals of bringing Halo into VR. Well, the guy just got hired by 343 Industries as an engineer, and if you don't know, 343 is the Xbox Game Studios studio that makes Halo. It's not stated if Nibre will be working on VR for 343 or what exactly he's working on at all, but if there is a guy that can bring Halo to VR in a meaningful way, this is him, and hopefully, maybe eventually, we'll see it actually come to fruition. Halo has always been one of my favorite game franchises of all time, and if I could see some grunt birthday party confetti in VR, I'd probably die happy. I will be streaming on Twitch right after this video and giving Larcenauts another go now that supposedly their Steam VR launch has been fixed. So come on over, I'd love to see you there. Also, slide on over to my Discord server, maybe a little biased, but I do think it's one of the coolest VR communities on the planet. And if you're looking for VR friends, it's a great place to start. I want to thank all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas like VR Champ, Nolan Brown, Benji, Biz, Buwutsi, CPCJ79, Debonair Fab, Biscuit, Dysfunctional Potato, Fur Trap, Fusion Oak, HCG Randon, Henry B, It's Lumi VR, Jonathan, KR, Lucid VR, Mud King, Pixel Thomas, Ridvo, Ronzarelli, That Brock Guy, The Omega Wolfster, and Very Evil Shadow. I couldn't do any of this without you. Don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.